Hi everybody, I'm Mieke Rood, scientific visualizer. I have a background in animal sciences at Dundee University and I've been doing this work for a living since 2004. In this video I'm going to tell you a bit about my work. Bear with me, I'm not a native speaker and if I can avoid speaking for camera, I do. That's why this video is filled with my work, sometimes as a diversion of me speaking. Way before I started doing this work for a living, I drew animals. Here you see one of the oldest illustrations I still have. I was 12 and this orphan duckling sat next to me on a couch. I've been mesmerized by animals from an early age and always had the urge to capture them by drawing them or making animals from clay. And I wanted to see how they were built. At this moment I'm reducing the amount of animals I have as pets, but I've never been without animals. And the animals I kept ranges from stick insect to birds and mammals. So I know my animals. As a result, I've always been focused on natural history and more specifically biology. My first self-bought books were two books of Nico Tinbergen, The Animal in its World, Volume 1 and 2. Since I'm 51, a large portion of my life we didn't have the possibilities we have now. So more than half my life I used a pencil and paper. Between the ages of 14 and 17 I was apprenticed to a painter. He learned me the basic techniques of illustration, something that benefits me to this day. I am convinced that everybody would benefit from learning illustration techniques before processing to learning applications. And with illustration techniques I really mean the basics. So not how to draw with a pencil, charcoal or pen and ink, but how to use light and dark, composition, knowing what makes a strong line, knowing how to make a gradient. As a result of that apprenticeship, I find myself always adding personalities to my work and I'm confident in what I make. I know when an illustration is done, if it's a Sumatran rhino baby or a gorilla portrait. Because I'm not only interested in visualization and science, I'm also a complete nerd. I started working with applications as soon as I could. This caterpillar I made with the first version of CorelDRAW around 1990. The actual reasons why I started working digitally, which didn't completely happen until 2006, are different though. Being a freelance scientific illustrator meant that I needed to be fast and efficient in what I do. Since all my work is eventually sent digitally, working completely digitally makes things easier. Despite the apprenticeship, I'm not a professionally trained illustrator. I don't make sketches beforehand, and I want to have as much flexibility as possible for as long as possible in the process of making stuff. Working in 3D, as I do now almost exclusively, makes me understand a subject a lot better than it did when working on paper. It enables me to get the proportions exactly right, which benefits the end result. One of the first things I did when I became a real-life scientific illustrator is getting into the GNSI, the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators. And except for a few years when I was ill, I have been a member ever since. I learned a lot by just looking at the work of my fellow guild members, and one of the things I did was setting myself goals. I saw an exceptional illustrator and tried to be as good as he or she was within a couple of years. And when I met that goal, I set another, and another, and another. If you want to become serious in natural science illustration, the GNSI is the guild to join. And I found out that the apprenticeship I did in my teens actually is largely covered with the Bible of the guild, the Guild Handbook of Scientific Illustration. For members it's $145, for non-members it's $190. Making this lecture I had to start over several times. The reason for this is that for me visualization is like breathing. It comes naturally and I don't think about it anymore. With most of what I do, I know what to make beforehand, and I work towards the image I have in my head. But that isn't helpful when I want to explain it to other people, of course. So I started thinking about what I wanted to achieve with my work. First of all, what is natural science illustration? Although it has several commonalities, it's different from medical illustration and has a different purpose. Medical illustration most of the time is about humans and everything linked to human diseases, operating techniques, human anatomy and such. Natural science illustration can be about humans, but most of the time it's not. Sometimes natural science illustration is only editorial, but its origin had mostly to do with the determination of species and being the eye of the researcher in an age when photography and scanning wasn't invented yet. But even with photography and scanning, illustrations, visualizations have a purpose, and not just as an art form. There are a lot of things that can't be fully captured by a photo or scan. With an illustration, you can emphasize features you want to show and leave structures you don't want to get in the way of the understanding what you want people to have. So natural science illustration ranges from editorial images, illustrations to determine the species, think of a bird atlas, infographics that show how a species looks from the inside, to views on a biotope on how species live, for example. In short, natural science illustration or natural history illustration is about observing and illustrating subjects from nature, science and culture, with their linkages to the environment being central. Scientific visualization actually has a vast range of styles and subjects. Where in previous centuries the style was limited to specific guidelines, nowadays there are as many styles as there are visualizers. Not all of these visualizers have a scientific background, but a lot of them do. And the reason for this change is mainly because our whole society became more visual. Scientific magazines like Science Magazine and Nature also are more inclined to have appealing visuals on their cover. As a result of that, the scientific community as a whole is a lot less strict on how subjects are visualized. The only restriction now is that the visualization needs to be accurate and appealing. Where we still saw mostly similar styles at the beginning of the 21st century due to digital visualization being in its infancy, now the sky is the limit. If you want to have an idea on the vast range of scientific styles and subjects, there are several places you can go. One of the oldest places is scientart.com. The website really is in need of an update, but a lot of GNSI members have a page on it. Another big research is the Twitter list of symbiotic.com. Symbiotic is founded by Glendon Mello, Calliope Monoiosis, and Katie Meskisics. I'm afraid I'm not pronouncing the names well, but I will write them down in the description. It has around 1100 people who work in scientific visualization one way or the other. Facebook also has different groups targeting scientific visualization. The paleontological community, for example, that's a hard word, has a great representation on Facebook. Paleontological illustrations are actually a large group in the scientific visualization community, largely because fossil reconstruction, per definition, is illustrated or modeled. An example of such a group is paleo artists. Well-known paleo artists are Julius Scotoni, Emily Willowbury, Scott Hartman, Esther van Hulsen, Bob Nichols, Lewis Ray, and Douglas Henderson. As you might have noticed, most of these are men. This is slowly changing, but it's still an issue in all areas of scientific visualization. The list Symbiotic made does a good effort, not only to show white men and tries to be as inclusive as possible, but unfortunately it still is mostly white men and women. Diversity is still a problem in scientific visualization too. Diversity in styles is getting better though. That ranges from hyper-realistic work to cartoons and anything in between. And diversity in subjects is vast. It ranges from the subjects I stated before to scientific research, technical illustrations, geology and more. How does this translate into my own work? I got into illustration and later visualization. I think it's weird to call my work illustrations because I wanted to know how animals are built. And I wanted to know it on the level of the old-fashioned scientific explorers. Think of Darwin and his voyage of the Beagle. But then in a modern setting. Most of my work exists out of a single image of a specimen, but sometimes I also make animals in their natural environment. I'm so glad 3D modeling applications exist nowadays. It enables me to be sure that what I make can be compared to the real life animal. Even though scientific visualization doesn't need to be completely lifelike, accuracy is key. And one of my main frustrations working in 2D was that I wasn't able to capture the actual animal. In 3D I can, and with the level of experience I now have in Zbrush, Blender, After Effects and so on, I can easily make it into work that doesn't look digital anymore. I will demonstrate that with showing how I made the octopus Eledone cirrhosa. The octopus Eledone cirrhosa. How did I start? Well, I always start, if I can, with an actual specimen. And regarding octopuses, you need to go to fishermen and ask them to keep them whole, because normally if you buy them at a fish store, you will get the octopus without the intestines. And so I went to Urk. Urk is a small fisher village nearby, and asked the people there if they could keep an octopus for me. They did, and it turned out to be the octopus Eledone cirrhosa. I immediately got it home, started photographing the specimen on the outside first, and worked my way in and took as much pictures as possible while the octopus looked still lifelike. After a day I added it in ethanol so I could keep it for a longer time. Once I knew the species, I knew what to look for. So luckily I have a subscription on Science Direct, and I also know how to use Sci-Hub, so I started collecting as much papers as I could. Given those papers, I knew what to look for within the octopus itself, and I was able to reconstruct the structures that weren't as easily viewable on a scale without having a microscope or such. Once I had enough papers to start, I went into Blender and made a first draft of the outside of the octopus. Because an octopus is mostly arms and a mantle, I had to figure out how to make the cavity of the mantle in such a way that I could use it in Zbrush and go on from there. I will show it to you later. But making the mantle at that point is good because you have to have it, but it's not the final result of the mantle in the model itself. It's just a way to have boundaries where I can work from. After I made it in Blender, I exported it into Zbrush and I started working on it. Once into Zbrush, I started working on the intestines at first, because those are the main objects within the mantle, and those are actually the stuff the mantle is built around. So I started working on the digestive glands, the hearts, the gills, and the ink sac, and so on. You can see it here in how I made the model in Zbrush. The problem with making illustrations, making 3D models, is that there's actually an enormous amount of data within those models. And what I've noticed in my work is if I do personal work, I mostly show people the end result, but almost never the process before I start visualizing. And I'm looking now to incorporate that in my process, in showing my progress, and letting people know what it takes to make this into something that has quality. Hi, and this is the octopus in Zbrush itself. I'm now going to show you a bit how it's built, and later on I will show you how I made the specific objects within the octopus. So for now, you see the outside, the mantle, the arms and the eyes. I gave it, for the standard model, a specific posture, mainly because this octopus is also called the curled octopus, and it gives a great view of the suckers on the legs, the single row suckers, and it shows everything in a nice composition. And for now, as you can see, this is Zbrush. I don't know if you already have some experience with this application, but Zbrush is my main application to work in. It's perfect for organic modeling, and I can recently, the last few years, I also used it as a render tool, because it has great potential for making renderings that aren't very digital looking. So for example, the turntable you saw earlier was made in Zbrush, and I can make objects look as if they are illustrated, and that's great. So now we go to the rest. On the right side you see all the subtools, and the subtools are divided in folders, and here you see all the folders. This makes my work a lot easier, because now I can switch on and off specific systems to show or to hide or whatever I need to do in a specific assignment. I will now remove or hide the mantle, and I will go to the circulatory system, and you'll see this is how it looks on the inside. And I see something that doesn't add up here, so I have to show look what this is. But anyhow, you can see right here that I can hide the things I need to hide, and as you can see now, the I think it's on, yes, it's on the circulatory system. Strange. So this is displaced, and I don't know why. Anyhow, this is the octopus as is. It's composed of basically any system you can think of within an organism. And here I have the beak and the eyes, and everything is based on the specimen I got and the literature you saw earlier. Just a moment, I'm going to frame it. As you can see, this right now isn't in a very high resolution. Within Zbrush you can show or hide the visibility of the high resolution, and this is what it is doing right now. For me, this is the bulk of my work. I check every organ within a body in the papers, and I try to model it in Zbrush. The problem most of the time with the work after that is if I haven't named it right, I have to look it up again. So one of the major issues I have with working on this is making sure that everything is named properly. So as you can see from the top, you see here the digestive gland and the how do you call it, the intestines, and here the gonads, here the gills. I especially the brain was a bit harder to do because I didn't open the specimen I have on this part. So most of this is based on the literature, and most of the literature was about Octopus vulgaris and not Eledone cirrhosa. So I'm going to hide everything but the brain and the nervous system, and the eyes are actually mostly part of the brain, of course. And this is, I think, what is this? Oh, this is from the circulatory system. Just a moment. So now it's gone. As you can see, here I got the nerves, the subesophageal complex, the optical nerves, the fibers of the connection to the eyes, the optical lobe. I will show it like this: the eyes, the brain, these are actually, these are not named probably, but these are actually the nerves towards the mantle, and those are statocysts. And the brain I have named on Zbrush. I will show it to you later. Also here are nerves, and now we go to the veins, and you see it's rather complex to make it like this. And just a moment, because the veins are actually connected to the circulatory system. And if I remove this, you will see that. As you can see, here is the heart, the central heart. Here are the other two hearts, and the blood vessels go into the head and into the arms. And I will remove this one, and I will show the digestive system. Just a moment. As you can see, I'm going towards the digestive system, and this is it. And so this is the mouth, and this is the anus, and the digestive gland is connected to the stomach here via two small ports, and I'm not sure if I have them here. And we have the gonads here, and it has a gonadal aorta that goes into the veins like this. And the brain, we had the beak. For the beak I made a specific PDF that I will link beneath the video, about the muscles within the buccal mass. And I love the way I can use actually any application to make my work more elaborate, more visual, and more insightful. So this is the model for now, and next we go to how I make objects within Zbrush. Okay, now on to how I make stuff in Zbrush. As you can see here on the screen, there is a cylinder, and I will show you how it's built. It has several layers, and the top and bottom are pie-like. Okay. Most of the time what I do is, this is actually still not a polymath, and polymaths are the stuff that you use to sculpt things and such. If I want to sculpt from this one, I go to Dynamesh and set the resolution rather high and do this. It will take some time. As you can see, now it's very dark, and I will zoom in, and you will see that it's composed out of enormous amount of polygons. If I zoom out, just a moment, and I show the normal stuff, you'll see that this is very smooth, and these are still as if it was the mesh you saw before. The reason why is because I set the resolution so high. Here you have all the brushes you can use. This one you can do this, for example. Most of the time I use this brush for painting, and just a moment I will show you. These are the materials, by the way, and in a matcap material you can't see the colors clearly, but if you do a flat sketch shaded, a white sketch shaded, and I do this, I can color it. And this is actually how I make the colors, the textures of all my objects, of all my models. The brushes are the main feature within Sketchfab, within Zbrush, and the most used brushes I use are move topological. Topological means that if you move one part of the object, a part that is separate from that object but still within the same subtool, won't be affected by the move. And that comes in handy when you are working on a lot of details, for example. But there is a downside with this brush. If you have an inside and an outside, it will move those two also independently. So if you aren't careful, you will move the inside outside the outside, and well, that can get you into a lot of trouble. Other brushes which are important for me, that is the DAM standard. What it does, it makes, as you can see, yeah, how do you call it? You can make all kinds of stuff with this one, and this is actually in a nutshell how I make stuff. This one is here. These are the step tools, and you can make folders, and as you have seen in the octopus, and you can arrange them according to a system, according to what you want to show in a specific illustration, etc., etc. There's another feature that's important, is the layer panel. If I have, for example, if I have a portrait of someone, and I've made a portrait of myself recently, then I have a default portrait, so a portrait that's only stares right in front of it, and it doesn't have any personality. What I can do is add layers, and with those layers I can make a smile without damaging the initial default model. I will show it to you. If I make a layer here and I go to, for example, I move stuff, and I rake stuff, and just a moment, I do this, and now the layer is done. I go back, just a moment. Here, as you can see, the layer keeps the information you just made without damaging the original. What I normally do is I make every single object I see into a separate subtool, and sometimes I merge them, but if I do that, for example, if I add, let's say I add a sphere and I move it, here are the move tools. As you can see, here I can move this one because I selected the cylinder. But if I want to move this one, I do it like this or this. And if I want to change the size within the X or Y axis, I can do it like this or this or this. As you can see, these are the way you can use these tools. This is the move, this is the scale, this is the rotate, and you don't have to do it here because that is for the gizmo can handle it within the gizmo itself, as you can see. But there are moments when you use these, and that is mainly with another tool I can show you, which is actually very comes in handy, and that is a Z-sphere. With Z-spheres I can make actually a base like I did in Blender. It is very organic, but you can use it to make veins, for example, or muscles or whatever. I will show it to you. For this one you need those three from the gizmo, because this Z-sphere is a bit different than the rest. Okay, I will show it to you. As you can see, I can add stuff. Just a moment, I will change the color a bit, because, and if I want to change it, I will do this and this. And now I have a kind of arm, for example. I can change the scale like this or this. And if I'm pleased with it, I can go further and add another and another and another and move those around. And like this you can make anything you want. It also comes in handy when you want to make plants, flowers, trees, whatever. If you want to turn this into something you can sculpt with, you go to Adaptive Skin, and I will show it to you what happens if I just use the default settings. Then this is happening. Well, sometimes this is enough, but if you want to have, if you are working on very small details and such, you change the dynamic resolution to as large as possible. And if you are pleased with how this translates into this, then you click on Make Adaptive Skin. You go up, and what you now see is this is actually the slot we are in right now. And here are other slots, and here is the skin I just made. As you can see, if you want to put that one into the slot you are working in, what you do is you go back to the Z-sphere, because that is where you came from and go to append, click, and now you see here the skin in the view, and you can add it. This one you can stop the preview because sometimes if you so you don't get confused by trying to model this one, because that's that you don't want to do that. You go to this one. As you can see, what I do now is I can do this and this, and I can model it like any other tool within Zbrush. Another very much used, another brush I use a lot is the smooth brush. That's basically under the shift key. As you can see now, it goes smooth and all the lines disappear, because those lines weren't actually in the mesh of the Dynamesh, but they were in the original Z-sphere. And now I can go further and further, and if I'm now pleased with how this looks, it doesn't look good, but imagine that it looks good. I go to the geometry, and I can keep this on, that doesn't matter. And Zbrush has a feature that's called Remesh, Z Remesher, and actually it's so good that most of the time I don't have to retopologize the objects within a model, because Zbrush does it for me. Here it is. As you can see, this is the button you have to push when you want the Z Remesher to work. This is the target polygon count, the adaptive size, and the curve strength. The adaptive size, what it does, it if you put it on very low setting, then it distributes the polygons evenly over the model, over the tool. If you set it high, it distributes the polygons towards curves and dents and so on. So what I normally do, if I just have something that doesn't have to move, I set the adaptive side on 10 and the curve strength about here. The reason for that is if you set the curve strength high, it keeps as much of the initial details you have, so you don't have to add them later, which does take a lot of work. I keep creases, I want to detect the edges, and I keep the groups. The reason why I keep the groups I will show later. And now I do the remesher. And you can see now it's not that smooth. As you can see here, there are some creases, but that's because I didn't work on that part. But as you can see now, it's a nice mesh that you can add details to and such. This is basically how Zbrush works. If you want to have more information, I will add some links in the description towards Pixologic. Pixologic has a free version of Zbrush. It's called Zbrush Core Mini. Zbrush Core is the cheap version of Zbrush, and Zbrush Core Mini is the free version. And I will add some links towards tutorials where you can learn a bit how to work with Zbrush. Okay, that's it. I hope you didn't fall asleep. I hope you have some insight now in how I make stuff. And I'm looking forward to your questions. Okay.